I have built many marketing teams and had to reconfigure them. And I would say if you really cannot have a large marketing team from day one, and I would actually not encourage that. Build your team organically over time and be very selective about the talent you want to have in-house versus what's more consultant based. But for the very beginning, what I would suggest is start with a good, solid strategic marketer who can see the big picture. Somebody who bridges the left brain and the right brain, who's had experience in both in terms of brand marketing and messaging, and maybe even has supervised creative work or done some themselves, but also knows enough about the left brain stuff uh, with some level of analytics appreciation, isn't afraid of numbers. They don't need to be a deep expert, but they do need to be a solid generalist who can understand these things and see a broad field and work with peer leaders, whether that's merchandising or sales or the CEO, but speak a certain language, really synthesize what the organization is trying to do and boil it down into go-to-market strategies that really reflect that intent. Now, this person as a generalist can't do that, to your question, can't do that by themselves typically, unless it's a really small business and the tactics are not overwhelming. But presuming that the organization is going to have some complexity to it, at a minimum, then building out that right brain, left brain idea, it's a good idea to maybe have a core group of 3 internally if the business can support it. And what I would suggest under the generalist, who is the marketing chief, whether it's a manager, director, VP, whatever you call it, have somebody who then is more of a support person, subject matter expert, or even a manager who's focused on the brand side of the equation, who knows something about telling a story, is a good writer in their own right, maybe can use, even if it's a tool like Canva or something, but can actually cobble together ads that are effective, can art direct others if they use contractors or consultants, but ultimately is a good storyteller and can not only tell stories, but organize the cadence and the thinking of when those stories should be told. And that's why they're going to need somebody on the left brain side as a peer who goes that much deeper than the leader into what's the data telling us. What's happening, when's it happening, why is it happening, does the data corroborate other data sets? Because when you start getting into customer records management, sales records, wholesale, retail, all these things, a really good data analyst or a data marketer is going to take all these things plus what they're seeing from Google Analytics, the whole pie there, and they can work really well with the more right brain oriented brand content marketer to merge the two together to say, here's a plan. This is who we're saying it to. This is why we're saying it. This is what the intended outcome is. And this is the timing. To put a very clear picture here, for example, is some businesses, or most businesses, have a seasonality to them. If you know your core audience is not going to be around in the summer, be very thoughtful about when you're putting in your paid media and how often you're sending your messages out there. If you know the audience is going to be at their cabin or on the road, you'll know based on the data that that's a good time to back off a bit. But on the other hand, if you know that the fall or winter holidays are a hot time, you're also going to know what messages, how frequently, the purpose and outcomes are going to be there. But to get there, at a minimum, have that kind of structure so that you can actually achieve those outcomes. This is much better than what typically happens, which is sometimes a person who is hired because the company will say, I just need somebody to build my ads. If you go about it that way, you're going to be tactically bound from day one, and you're not going to be strategic. So if you have this opportunity, that's how I would structure it. Start, on the other hand, with your helping hands. Think about things like fractional resources, contractors, things like that, that can give you that extra oomph. Don't build it tactic up, because you're going to find that you never get where you want to get in terms of strategic thinking.
Got it. And then I know we have thoughts around, building a perfect digital marketing team. Does this align with kind of what you're explaining, Tom?
Yeah, very much. Because, for example, in this hierarchy, marketing leadership, think of that as big picture, like I said, integrating with the broader organization. But when you start getting into editorial director, for example, you're getting to somebody who's still seeing a fairly broad view, but then has underneath them, that person, a very good content manager, a very good creative manager. Similarly, left brain would be more that acquisitions director, science on how people are entering the funnel, how they're going to engage with you, what problems are they searching for to be, that they want addressed. Having like a true analyst under that person, and a lead generation manager, that person who can get into like workflow building and things like that. Now you're building out capability that's based on purpose and outcomes, which is really what strategy is all about, is you have a purpose and outcome in mind. And when you get to those blue circles down there, now you're getting, if you are so blessed, and we hope you would be, you're having good discussions then on the single desk contributors, like a blog writer or a social media manager or a graphic designer, and on down through these bubbles here, where now you've built out a team. And the last thing I'll stress is, when you get to this kind of level, it's always good still to question, how much of this do you want to do in-house versus where's your cutoff point where you're actually using outside talent. And the reason why I mention this is, and I've learned this the hard way over many years, when you get stuck into a paradigm of saying it's always got to be FTEs, full-time equivalents, that I hire, you find that a lot of these jobs, like graphic designers and testers and email specialists, a lot of these people tend to move job to job, and your cost to rehire can go up. So think about favor strategy and see how far down you want to go into tactics. But keep in mind a cutoff where you say, maybe I'm better off in having a more fluid arrangement with a trusted partner for that tactical help, because you may find that it keeps your cost of hire and rehire down. It also allows you to be more nimble, especially due to seasonality on, if I'm going to have to heavy up on content, it's okay to shift more of my resources there. Maybe I've got enough of a graphics catalog that's already can be leveraged. I don't need to have a fixed cost with graphic design year round. So just something to think about, but this chart does really explain that very well.